You never forget the day someone tries to steal your land, especially when they do it with a smile. It was a warm Tuesday morning in late spring. The sun had just begun peeking over the pines, casting long shadows across the still surface of Lake Monroe. The water glimmered like glass, and I hadn't even taken the second sip of my coffee when I heard the sharp crunch of designer heels hitting gravel. From the porch of my lodge, I looked up to see Meredith Langley, president of the Whispering Pines HOA, operating down my private dock like she owned the whole lake. Behind her, two of her loyal board members flanked her like Secret Service agents, one gripping a clipboard and the other balancing an iced coffee. Meredith wore a wide-brimmed sun hat, oversized sunglasses, and a smirk that said she expected the world to yield. She stopped halfway down the dock, turned with a dramatic flair, and said without preamble, "Mr. Dawson, the HOA has voted to designate this lake as shared community property." I almost dropped my coffee mug. "This lake has been in my family since 1947, I replied, stunned. "It's private. Always has been." Meredith tilted her head, voice dripping with condescension. "Well, it's accessible to the entire neighborhood, and since it enhances the communal aesthetic, the board has ruled that it qualifies as a shared natural feature." I stood speechless, the morning sun suddenly feeling a lot hotter. She kept going. "Starting next week, we'll be installing a shared-use dock, a paddleboat kiosk, and picnic stations along the east bank. Any fencing or no trespassing signs will need to be removed." "You can't do that," I snapped. "You're trespassing right now." She just smiled. That smug, slow smile people like her seem to practice in the mirror. "We're doing this for the good of the community. You'll still be allowed to enjoy the lake, of course. But so will everyone else." And with that, she turned and walked off like she'd just won some HOA crusade. I didn't follow. I didn't shout. I just stood there, heart pounding. I wasn't angry. That came later. 2 days later, a contractor rolled up with a delivery: lumber, posts, cement, and hardware. The side of the truck read Community Dock Phase 1. A temporary construction permit signed off by the HOA's architectural committee was nailed right to my boat ramp. That night, sleep never came. I paced my grandfather's lodge, running my hand along the cedar walls. Each log a memory. The walls were lined with old family photos, fish fries, hunting trips, for generations pulling catfish from the dock Meredith just tried to claim. That's when I remembered Travis Holt. Travis was an old friend from my days as a wildlife officer down in the Everglades. We'd wrangled gators together during the 90s. He owed me one. A big one. I just never had a reason to call it an until now. I rang him up first thing the next morning. "You still run the transport service?" I asked. A pause. "What are you up to, Dean?" Travis asked suspiciously. "Just need a few of your scaly friends to help remind some folks that lakes aren't public swimming pools." He laughed, a real belly laugh that only gator men can manage. "I'll see you Friday," he said. Saturday night, just after dusk, Travis's flatbed rolled down my dirt road. He backed up to the ramp, and together we released 3 of his permanent residents: Big Tex, Lula, and Two-Bit. All adult American alligators. Fully tagged, fully legal, and ready to remind people that nature comes with conditions. Sunday rolled in hot and sticky. It was the big day, the HOA's Grand Lake kickoff. They had tents, lawn chairs, hot dogs, balloons, and kids running wild in swimsuits. Meredith, ever the queen, wore a floral sundress and stood center stage with a microphone. "Today marks a new era of unity in Whispering Pines," she said, arms outstretched. "Let's celebrate nature together." Then came the moment I'd waited for. "Everyone, don't be shy, go ahead and jump in." I leaned back in my rocking chair and took a slow sip of sweet tea. 10 minutes later, the first scream split the air. A teenage boy had spotted Lula's snout peeking just above the waterline. What followed was pandemonium, parents shouting, kids crying, people running for their cars. Meredith tried to keep control, yelling into her mic to stay calm, but it was like trying to reason with a tornado. I didn't say a word. Didn't even smile. They wanted access. I just forgot to mention who else lived in the lake now. That lake wasn't just water to me. It was memory, history, bloodline. My grandfather, Carl Dawson, bought this land after World War II. Back when this whole region was pine forest and muddy roads. He dammed the creek with his own 2 hands and a mule. 3 years of backbreaking labor. That dam formed Lake Monroe, a 12-acre crescent framed by hills and fed by 2 natural springs. He raised his kids here, built this lodge with cedar logs. Every summer we came back fishing, swimming, bonfires on the 4th of July. I caught my first base off the south dock, married my wife under the willow tree by the west bank. My kids learned to swim in that water, and my grandkids still come every summer. So when Meredith Langley stood on that same dock and told me it wasn't mine anymore, it wasn't just an insult. It was a declaration of war. Whispering Pines wasn't always an HOA. Used to be just Dawson land and a few scattered homesteads. But developers sniffed out opportunity. In 2008, some Atlanta firm made my dad an offer. He was tired, sick of taxes and upkeep, so he sold off the outer parcels and kept the heart 25 acres and the lake for the family. At first, the newcomers were decent folks. Retirees, quiet families, weekend fishermen. But that changed in 2012 when Meredith moved in. She was a widow from Arizona, bought the biggest house on the ridge with her late husband's money, or so people whispered. Drove a Tesla, wore pearls to HOA meetings, and treated the rest of us like we were background characters in her gated fantasy. Within 6 months, she was HOA president. No one else ran. No one thought it mattered. But Meredith did. She started with mailbox regulations, then lawn standards, then fines for having visible trash bins or bird feeders near the road. I kept quiet, figured she'd burn herself out eventually. But then she banned fishing along any unauthorized shoreline. That meant my shoreline. She built a cheap blue dock and declared it the only legal spot for kayaking or casting a line. She even threatened to fine my grandkids for swimming off our own dock. I nearly lost it. But it got worse. She found a clause buried in the HOA charter, a vague provision about communal rights to natural features adjacent to accessible common land. That's how she made her play for the lake. I didn't hear it from her. I found out from a notice zip tied to my fence. Effective May 10th, Lake Monroe is designated as shared community property. All signs, barriers, or fencing must be removed by May 12th. My name wasn't on it. Neither was my consent. I stormed into the next HOA meeting. Meredith sat smug behind a folding table, sipping cucumber water. "Who gave you the right?" I asked. She didn't flinch. "The board voted unanimously. It's my land. You can't vote away a deed." "You're welcome to challenge it legally," she said sweetly. "But we've allocated funds for defense. We're confident in our interpretation." That's when I knew they weren't guessing. They were betting I wouldn't fight back. They didn't know about Travis. 2 days before the barbecue, the HOA's contractor returned. Marking trees, unloading lumber. I told them to stop. Showed them the survey stakes me grandfather's boundaries. Confirmed by the county. They shrugged. "We're just doing what the board told us." That night, I reread my grandfather's journals. He wrote about this lake like it was a living thing. Every fish caught. Every flood endured. Every inch of shoreline cleared by hand. I stood by the old post where we carved initials every summer. I smiled. "Time for new residents," I whispered. Sunday arrived and the HOA lined the lake like it was the 4th of July. Kids splashed, burgers sizzled, neighbors mingled. I rocked on the porch, tea in hand. Then Meredith made her mistake. She raised her mic and said it again. "Don't be shy. Jump in." 3 teens dove off the dock. Cheers rang out, then silence. Big Tex rose from the water, slow and regal, eyes and snout breaking the surface like a battleship. "Gator," someone screamed. Panic exploded. Chairs flipped, grills toppled, potato salad went flying. Dogs bolted. Meredith's poodles disappeared into the woods. I rocked quietly, watching it all unfold. Nobody got hurt. The gators kept to themselves. But no one swam again. That evening, the HOA sent me a threatening email. "You've endangered the community. Legal action will follow unless the wildlife is removed immediately." I almost laughed. Instead, I replied, "You might want to double-check your property lines." I attached the deed. County surveys. Wildlife relocation permits. The next morning, I printed everything out and put copies in every mailbox. By noon, the neighborhood thread was on fire. "Wait, the lake's private? He has permits?" Karen said we voted on it. Was it legal? That evening, 2 families knocked on my door to apologize. Others sent messages. People weren't looking at Meredith the same. Thursday came the HOA meeting. Meredith tried to cancel, citing safety concerns. Didn't work. Over 40 residents showed up. Some brought popcorn. I stood and told the story of the lake. Held up maps, permits, my grandfather's deed. Travis joined by video call. Explained the legality, the permits, and why the Gators were allowed. Then I dropped the final truth: the HOA never had legal claim. Every vote? Built on a lie. The room fell quiet. Then Mary Collins, a retired county judge, stood. I move we censure Meredith Langley for overreach and misuse of authority. Meredith exploded. I built this community. Before me, it was chaos, canoes on lawns, junk everywhere. People murmured. A few shouted back. Then Todd, her closest ally, spoke up. You lied, Meredith. You said the lake was unclaimed. It wasn't. I regret backing you. Others joined in. Complaints poured out. The dam had burst. Mary called for a vote. Out of 43 attendees, 38 voted to remove Meredith as president. Bill Carter, a quiet, well-respected neighbor, was nominated as interim president. He accepted. We're going to do things differently, he said. With fairness. With respect. Applause filled the room. The next morning, a for sale sign appeared on Meredith's lawn. No goodbyes. No apologies. Just a moving truck and a silent exit. The lake stayed private. The community stayed strong. The Gators? Legends now. We even put up a sign. Private property. Resident Gators. Swim at your own risk. And me? I'm back on my porch. Sweet tea in hand. Watching the lake shimmer at sunset. Justice didn't come from courts. It came from truth and a community tired of silence. Because sometimes the real predators don't swim. They walk on land in heels with clipboards. And when you stand your ground with grit and grace, they run.